Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us. Happy Monday for those of you that are joining us live. Allison Skalberg here, Consolidated Planning Group. We are excited to be here today with both Dwayne Graham and Cynda Green, and we are talking about an important topic that comes up all the time about housing for our loved ones with a disability. And we're pretty excited about today's presentation. It's not one that we've done in the past, and the reason I'm most excited about it is what we're talking about today. Most people haven't heard of, and they're not really even aware that it exists. So, Dwayne is going to be talking to us today about the Family Opportunity Mortgage, and Cynda is going to be talking about creating your own shared housing. We've had Cynda with us in the past, and she's got some worksheets and some other things that she's helped us with in the past. And Cynda is with Texas Parent to Parent. So we are glad that all of you are here today. Just from a housekeeping perspective, we always like to let people know that we are in webinar mode, and that means that we can't see you or hear you, but we do know that you are out there, and we invite you to put your questions in the chat box. We're going to get to as many questions as we can during the hour that we have together today. So if you're planning your day, you can plan on that. All of our webinars are always recorded, and we always share a copy of the slides of what we're talking about. So you don't have to take notes on every single thing you hear. Anything with links or anything like that is going to be in these slides, and you're going to get an email with a link to the recording as well as a copy of the slides. So just to talk to you a little bit more about Consolidated Planning Group. Consolidated Planning Group is a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. So we help families just like yours plan for the future of their loved one with a disability. We help answer questions like who's going to care for my child when I'm gone? How and when do we apply for state and federally funded programs that may help our kids? How do we maintain that eligibility and make sure that they don't get kicked off of something that's really critically important that they have? So as always, we always mention that it's really, really important to work with a specialist. When it comes to planning for special needs, we are fans of working with a specialist, whether it's on the financial side, which is what we do. We're the money. How much money do we need to fund a special needs trust? Or it's the legal side on the special needs trust, the wills, the guardianship, the legal documents. You definitely want to work with a specialist. So having said all of that, again, we are glad all of you are here. Don't be shy if you have questions. Somebody else probably does too. So you can put your questions in the chat box. If you're listening to this on podcast and you'd like a copy of these slides, you can reach out to us at contact@cpgcares.net, and we will be happy to send you a copy of the slides. And just for everybody else's purposes, all of our past webinars live on the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel. There's over 400 webinars on planning for special needs. We've got them titled in such a way that you can search the topic for the step in the planning trail that you guys are on now and listen to those at your convenience. So having said all that, Dwayne and Cynda, welcome. So glad you guys are here with us.
Thank
And
you.
Dwayne,
Thank
we're
you.
going to let you tell us a little bit more about who you are, who you represent, and tell us about this Family Opportunity Mortgage.
Sure, sure. First, I want to say thanks for having me. Thanks for allowing me to help spread some knowledge. Not a lot of people know that this program exists, so I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to be able to share the knowledge. So the Family Opportunity Mortgage, it allows for a family member to purchase a house for a disabled child. With it, it allows for securing financing that it's better than some of the traditional routes that most people take. Allison, can we go to the next slide? So it offers flexibility on down payment requirements, making homeownership more attainable to families in various financial situations. So with this particular product, you are allowed to do anywhere from 3 to 5% down. Now, in most cases, what someone in this type of situation would do is they would purchase the home as an investment property. With an investment property, even if your child is going to be living there, go back one slide, Allison. Sorry. Yeah. So what most people do in this situation is they purchase a home as an investment property, and with the investment property, it requires at least 15% down. So with this option, it allows the parent to purchase with anywhere from 3 to 5% down. Let's go to the next one, Allison. Really, really good part of it as well is the interest rate and the affordability aspect. It's much more appealing. So again, the alternative would be to purchase it as an investment property, but the interest rates, the qualifications, the costs that go with it, or you purchasing as an investment property, it's higher. So with this option, you're able to purchase it as a primary residence for your child. The down payment requirement is lower. The cost is lower. The rate is better.
And you touched on this, Dwayne, but that's the thing is, for anybody that has more than one property and have purchased investment properties in the past, and had a mortgage on it, that those mortgage rates aren't as good. And not only that,
Yes.
when it's an investment property, when it comes to insuring, and in Texas, we all have insurance problems with the hurricanes
Mhm.
and the floods and all the other stuff. Insurance is expensive here. But when it comes to insuring the house, it's a dwelling policy as opposed to a traditional homeowner's policy, which is
Yes.
also exponentially more expensive. So the question is with this traditional mortgage that is available for families that have a loved one with a disability, can they have the traditional homeowners insurance for these properties as well?
That's a great question. Yes, they can. So how it's looked at is it's looked at just how it would be looked at if you were purchasing a primary residence for yourself. The only difference is you're using it as a home for your disabled child. So the exact same criteria, the exact same steps, the exact same qualification, the exact same rate, cost, everything as a primary residence applies to this one.
So it's
Yeah.
basically considered owner occupied when you're buying this for your disabled adult child.
From an underwriter's perspective, how they look at it, yes. Yes. So the
Awesome.
same qualifications, the same guidelines, the same rates, everything still applies as if it were your primary residence. So yes, yes.
I think there's a lot of talk, and I know that Cynda is gonna talk about this. We've done a lot of housing webinars and, residential webinars, but one of the things that comes up the most, Dwayne, in our practice is, hey, I'm thinking about, creating my own housing option for my child and make it, a small, maybe there's two or three other, roommates or things like that. So this is, maybe might be next door to their property or close by to
Mm,
their property, things
mm.
like this. So this is definitely an ongoing thought process. So this is exciting.
Yeah. So one of the really really cool aspects is again it's looked at just like how it be looked at as if it were your primary residence. So the same interest rate, the same down payment, the same cost, the same everything would apply, even the taxes. So with it, you can add your child if you wanted to the title. And whenever you apply for you can apply for a homestead exemption for them whenever everything happens, whenever you close. So it's pretty cool. And again, not that many people know about it.
How old does the individual with a disability? So if the parents are doing this, on behalf of their disabled child, is there an age requirement that the disabled child is at least 18?
Yes, you read my mind. You know where I was going. Yes, the disabled child has to be 18. How it's looked at is the disabled child, from an underwriter's perspective, they're not able to work. So mom and dad are stepping in to provide the financial um, need or the financial resources to be able to have them have a home for themselves. Yeah. So they do have to be 18. Yes.
Okay, and so one question we have is how does this impact other benefits? So when it comes to SSI and Medicaid,
Mhm.
a person can always have one house, one car worth any value. So it shouldn't, owning a home doesn't impact SSI and Medicaid, that it's not going to impact that adversely. But keep in mind that this mortgage is not going to be in the kid's name, it's in the parent's name, right?
Yes.
And so whether or not you're going to have the kid on the title or not, that's a whole nother webinar for another day,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of question on whether or not that is good or not, because we want to protect our kids that may have learning disabilities or may be susceptible to being taken advantage of from somebody who doing them out of something. So sometimes what we do, and this is a conversation for an attorney, sometimes these houses may be held in a special needs trust or another way that may have some protections for the person with a disability to prevent things like that from happening.
Now, with as far as requirements, so it requires at least a 620 credit score. And again, you can do anywhere from 3 to 5% down, and you can purchase a home and go up to a 766,550 loan amount. Now, that's the loan amount, not the purchase price. So anything above that, so technically, someone could purchase $1 million home, do the difference between the 766 and the 550, and still be able to qualify for this product. Go back one, Allison. Yes. Now it offers, go forward one. It offers both fixed and adjustable rates depending on preferences. And it's it's whatever works best for you, whatever works best for your situation. So you do have the ability to go with a fixed rate. You have the ability to go with an adjustable rate. And again, it's what works best for your circumstance.
We're having some questions, and I think that we need some clarification, because again, this loan is not the loan for your kid. Someone says, what if they are full-time employed? What if your child is able to work part-time? Does that impact the ability to qualify for the loan? Can we talk about that? And again, this loan would be in the parent's name, typically, not the kid. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. So it potentially could impact. Now, couple of options. If the child, the purpose of the loan is for a disabled child who isn't able to qualify by themselves for the mortgage. Now, if they do qualify by themselves, then we would just do a regular loan. So for this particular product, it's to show that they can't qualify by themselves. Now, if let's say their income is fairly good and it's a little bit off, then we can just add them to the loan. As long as the income is high enough with everyone, the credit is high enough, assets are high enough, then we just add everyone. Now with this particular one, if the child isn't able to qualify by themselves, that's when the parent comes on and they're on the mortgage by themselves. It's a great question.
Okay, perfect. And are these loans applied through Fannie Mae? Tell us a little bit more about your organization and then who the loans go through.
Sure, sure. So with my organization, I work with New American Funding. We're a direct lender and loan servicer. What that means is we lend our own money. Our rates are typically better than most lenders. Our costs are lower than most lenders. Our guidelines, our requirements aren't as strict as most lenders. Now, this particular product is only offered through Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae is a government-sponsored entity that they basically own the loan. And one of the things that they allow for is this particular product. So there are other government-sponsored entities out there. This one is specific to Fannie Mae. Now, most clients will never know if something is with Fannie Mae or one of the other government-sponsored entities. It's something that we as a lender, we look at to see what product works best for this particular client. So for a parent who has a disabled child and they're looking at purchasing a home for them, this is the best option. Now, there is no geographic restriction. So you can purchase a home anywhere, and it enables families to purchase houses in their preferred location. So one of the things that Allison talked about earlier was someone purchasing a house and buying the house beside them just to keep the family close, keep everyone together. That's perfectly acceptable. In most situations, that would not, because again, with this particular product, it's designed for someone in that situation. Most underwriters would look at that and think that the person who's buying the house, they're buying the house with the intent of actually renting it. They're not buying it with the intent of living there. So in most examples, if somebody's buying a house that's right beside the house that they're buying, underwriter is going to push back on that. With this particular one, as long as you can show the need for the housing for your disabled child, the underwriter would give no pushback.
I have just a quick question because I know some people have had ideas of like maybe they have a house and they have land themselves and they're
Mhm,
thinking about building something out. Maybe they're going to build some kind of duplex or something like
mhm.
that. Does that work with this or not really? I know construction loans are different than I'm not a loan specialist, but
Sure,
if
sure,
somebody
sure.
was wanting to build something out, how would that work?
Yes, it could work. So what would typically happen in that scenario is someone would start, they would do their construction, they would go with the construction loan. Once everything's finished, we would do a refinance to put them with this product. So yes, yes, it could work. Okay. Now, it offers flexibility in income. Give me 1 second. Sorry, guys. Flexibility with income from different sources. So you can be self-employed, you can be a W-2 employee, you can be both. There's flexibility on the guidelines, so it's not specific to a particular income source. Next one, Allison. Allows buyers to retain their primary residence while purchasing a home for a family member, maintaining stability for the entire family. So again, in the example that I gave earlier, you can literally buy the house beside you and still be able to use this product. In most examples, you would be able to do that because the underwriter is going to assume that you're purchasing with the intent of not moving there. You're purchasing it with the intent of doing it as an investment property. And because the terms, the rates, the costs are more favorable for the primary residence versus the investment property, in most cases, the underwriter will push back on that. Now, in this particular example, they wouldn't because you're showing the need for the home for your disabled child.
Okay, so we've got a couple of things. So this says, so this is just not in Texas. It would work
It's
in another state if they wanted
yes,
to buy it in another state, and so that is totally doable. And when
mhm,
you talk about the flexibility in income, is that referring to the parent and the child, or one or the other?
yes.
Okay,
Both, both.
perfect.
So with some programs, you can't use some sources of income. With this, as long as we can document that it is a good source and it's likely to continue, then yes, the underwriter will allow it. Okay, encourages familial support networks by enabling families to live closer. Sorry, guys. While maintaining separate residences. So again, you can literally purchase a house across the street. The purpose of the program is to keep the family unit together. So it allows you to purchase and still maintain the family support while providing a safe, stable environment for your child. Next slide, Allison.
We got a couple more questions that I just
Sure.
wanted to mention to you. So yes, in clarity, it is available all across the United States. It's not just in Texas. It is definitely available here,
Sure.
in Texas. Um, and when it comes to the homestead, can you go over that again? In Texas, if we buy a house under our
Mhm,
name for a
mhm.
disabled child, would we get a homestead exemption for that house as well, even if they already have a primary residence?
No, they would not. You would have to add the disabled child to the title, and the portion, if it's, so just as an example, let's say it's mom and dad and child, the homestead will be applied to 50% because in that example mom and dad are owner and child is owner, so they share 50%. This is how the county looks at it. They share 50% ownership, so 50% of the homestead exemption would be applied, but mom and dad could still keep their homestead exemption. It wouldn't
The
affect
bottom
that at all.
line is if the kid is on there, then the kid can get 50% of that exemption. So that is the thing.
Correct.
And then
Yes.
as far as your services, Dwayne, do you work all across the United States or do you predominantly work in Texas, and do you work with people remotely and like technology, all that kind of stuff?
Sure, sure, sure. So predominantly in Texas, but I can do loan licensed in Texas, but my company is licensed in the entire country, so we can do loans anywhere. And as far as working remotely, yes, majority of the loans that we originate, families that we help, everything's done remotely, everything's done electronically. So we have secure portals where clients can upload documents for us to review. Majority of the documents are e-signed. The closing, we have options where you can actually e-sign the documents, or we can send a mobile notary, or you can actually go to the title company. So it's personal preference.
Awesome. And so if people are looking out of state or attending this from out of state, then you can make referrals to those officers within your company as well. Here's
So
a
I would
great question.
so
What disability documentation is required? I mean, so how does a person, is it just stated that they have a kid with a disability, or what is the requirement for that?
So there isn't anything specific. So whatever, just as an example, whatever documentation we would send to Social Security, that's basically what we would take. We present it to the underwriter to show if they're getting Social Security disability, that would be proof as well that the child is disabled. So as long as we can make it make sense to the underwriter, we're not going to push back. There isn't anything specific. It's just documentation to show that the child is legitimately disabled. Yes.
So one more question, and then we're going to continue on.
Mhm.
What about an example of a sibling that wants to buy a house for the benefit of their disabled sibling, and the person that is buying the house will be the caregiver for that sibling? Does this
Mhm.
apply for situations like that?
Unfortunately not. So question, is the sibling 100% caregiver and basically um hmm, let me circle back to you on that because I just thought of something. So let me circle back to you on that one. I'll get the answer to you, Allison, and then you can circulate it to the group.
We can
I'm
put
thinking
an
no, but
email out on
yes,
that. And again, a person says, can a child on SSI be on the title? So again, we have entire webinars on SSI and Medicaid, but in even if they're getting SSI, they can have one house and they can have one car. The house could be worth $5 million. It does not matter when, a person has to have a place to live. So that is not
yes.
a pressing issue. What about a situation if parents maybe don't have a social, but a child does? How does that work?
So parents don't have a social security number, but the child does. Allison?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. For that scenario, that wouldn't work because with this particular product, we have to be able to pull credits on the parents to show that they qualify credit wise. So there are three things that an underwriter looks at. The underwriter looks at income, credit, and assets. And as long as income is high enough, credit is high enough, assets are high enough, then they qualify for the product. If they don't have a social at all, then more than likely they don't qualify because they don't meet the credit aspect. Now, we do have products for someone who does not have a social, but for this particular one, it wouldn't work. Yeah. So another great thing about the product is it supports the disabled adult children in achieving independent living goals by assisting them in purchasing suitable homes. So it fosters independence even though you're still um, close to your family unit. So next slide, Allison. Provides family with a long-term investment opportunity, building wealth and financial security. So with this, how it's looked at is, in my opinion, real estate is one of the fastest ways to build wealth. So with this product, it's looked at again exactly how it would be looked at if you were purchasing your primary residence. So with this home, you pay it off, you can pass it on, or your child can pass it on to the next person down the line. So it's a vehicle for achieving and building wealth.
So let's talk about it for a minute. So let's say a family does this and they're
Mhm,
putting their loved one with a disability in there, and then for whatever reason, it doesn't work out. I mean, there could be a million reasons. It's just not a
mhm,
good fit for the kid. The kid
mhm,
passes away. I mean, there's a million
mhm,
things that could come up over time. So later down the road, if the disabled adult child is not living in the house, do they lose their ability to have the traditional homeowners insurance? Does that change anything? Does it mess anything up?
For the insurance, it could. For the mortgage, it wouldn't. It wouldn't change anything for the mortgage. Now, one important thing, and I'm glad you asked that question, Allison. One important thing is one of the documents that the parent has to sign at closing is that the home is going to be the child's primary residence for at least 12 months. So that's one very, very important aspect. They have to live there as their primary residence for at least 12 months. Now, again, with this particular product, it's just like it would if you're purchasing your primary residence. What most people don't know is at closing, they actually sign a document that says that that home is going to be their primary residence for at least 12 months. So it's the exact same thing. It has to be the child's primary residence for at least 12 months. Now, as far as the insurance aspect, it potentially could, because if your insurance provider finds out that the child isn't living there as their primary residence, then they may give it a hard time. Yeah,
Okay, and so another question that we have is, could this be the primary resident of the child and a parent, or could this be the
it could.
primary residence of multiple kids with disabilities for these families that are thinking about creating this shared housing and they may have two roommates or something like that?
Yes,
Is there
it could.
any issue with somebody else living there with the
No,
person with a disability as well? Okay,
not at all. Not at all.
so
So
no issue on that.
yeah,
Okay,
parents could
so
live there. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Allison.
so we have a question, and Cynda, if you can answer this, will this interfere with the HCS qualification for a disabled child? If they are currently in a group home, could they switch to this through a host home or something else? I think this is a great question for you, Cynda. You're on mute.
The answer is yes, it could work. You could do the host home. So if they're in a group home, you buy a home under this program. Yes, you could do HCS host home.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
All right, next slide, Allison. Promotes the accumulation of generational wealth by enabling families to invest in real estate and pass assets down to future generations. So we touched bases on that a little bit previously. So again, how it's looked at is it's your primary residence. It's looked at the exact same way as you would a primary residence. So you can pass it on to the next person on the line if you wanted to, or the child could. Next slide, Allison. By leveraging the benefits of the Fannie Mae Family Opportunity Mortgage, families can overcome financial barriers and achieve their homeownership dreams while providing support and stability to their loved ones. So again, the program is designed to foster the family togetherness. It's designed to bring families together. So the purpose is, again, providing a safe, stable environment for your loved ones.
Dwayne, I have to say that I love this. There's a lot of
Pretty cool.
talk, when it comes to, we talk about Medicaid waivers, and I know that's not your wheelhouse and waivers. Somebody was just talking about HCS a moment ago. And waivers, all states have waivers, Medicaid waivers, and the point of a waiver is designed to waive off some of the cost of care for caring for an individual with a disability to keep them in home and community-based services and not be institutionalized, for lack of a better word. But basically saying individuals with a disability do best when they're in their own area and community and
Yes.
have those resources around them. So this makes that it truly is an opportunity
Yes.
mortgage. How long has this been around, and how come we don't hear about this? I would say that the people that listen to our podcast and our webinars and things like that, we are like advocate parents. We keep our ear to the ground on this stuff and we share information. How long has this been around?
It's been around for a while, so I can't tell you the exact date, but I can tell you that the first one that I did was about 10 years ago. So it's been around for a while. Again, it's just a product that not that many people know about. I've actually been asked by I've been asked by parents who are in this exact same situation. They come to me, they talk about purchasing an investment property, and during our conversation, I uncover that they're purchasing the house for their disabled child, because they think that they have to go the route of purchasing as an investment property. For this one, it's literally designed exactly for that. The terms are better as far as interest rate and cost. The monthly payment is better because the rate is better. The down payment is lower. The underwriting criteria is not as strict as it were if it were an investment property. So it's designed for someone in the exact same situation that you just described. Yes.
And Dwayne, I have to be honest, I invited you here today to speak about this because I know that you're very, very experienced in the industry. You've been doing these things a long time. There are a lot of choices out there for mortgage officers, and a lot of them do not understand. You put your information on the internet, and then you're bombarded. They're all running your credit. They're bombarding you and things like that. So I wanted to have somebody that I knew that I trust and that I know can do a good job on this, because I would say that just like all financial advisors, they're not nuanced in special needs, and all attorneys are not nuanced in your special circumstances. There's a lot of mortgage officers that don't even know that this exists, even though that they're in the industry, and they've probably likely never ever even done one. So I think that is really, really important. So we've got Dwayne's contact information here, his email address. Dwayne is prompt to respond and communicate, and I would say that again, all the electronic communications, whatever it may be, and everything not being a manual process, that's using technology in this day and age is important. And so a couple of things, we're not done yet, so everybody hang tight, because Cynda's going to be talking to us about shared housing. So this is exciting. One last thing for you, Dwayne. In general, in credit, I saw that you had a slide that said a person's credit could be as low as 620 to qualify. There are credit requirements. People with terrible credit, this is not going to be a good fit. People without a social security number, this isn't going to work. But when it comes to credit, at a credit score at 620, that's pretty lenient.
Yes. So with us, we're a direct lender, so our guidelines aren't as strict, requirements aren't as strict. I think even just for a regular loan, I've heard it where some lenders require 660 or 680. So we go down to a 620 for this product. We have products that go down to a lower credit score, not this one, but we do have products that go down to a lower credit score. But again, because we're a direct lender, our guidelines, our requirements aren't as strict as most lenders.
One last thing that I want you to tell us, because again, we don't do what you do, but we need to hear this. So guys, if you're thinking about this, give us the top 5 things to do if you're thinking about you might want a mortgage sometime soon, like maybe not change jobs. If you're 1099, you need to have 3 years.
Yes.
Give us the highlights on that.
Sure. Don't apply for any debt that you don't necessarily need right now. Extremely important. We have to calculate what's known as debt to income ratio. That's how much you take in per month versus how much you put out per month. For everything that shows up on the credit report, the minimum monthly payment versus your income. So don't apply for any non-necessary debt. If you can avoid having anybody pull your credit, that will be best. Not necessarily don't, but it's advised that you try not to unless absolutely necessary to change jobs. So if you do have to change jobs, feel free to reach out to me. I'll guide you on this is what you need to do. Here's the thing that I'd recommend to make the process as easy, straightforward, and simple to underwriting as possible. So that's the job aspect. If you're a 1099 or self-employed borrower, and we do a really good job of guiding our clients. Okay, so if you are a 1099 or self-employed borrower, majority of the time, the income that's reported is usually lower than you probably make. An accountant's job is to try to provide you with as many write-offs as possible. When it comes to purchasing a house, the writing off everything is not the best approach. So if you are thinking about purchasing a home within the next couple of years, again, reach out to me. I'll guide you on this is what you need to do. Here are things that you should steps that you should take. Now, last one that I touch on is try to be able to paper trail any kind of large deposit. So large deposits, anything, I'd say anything over $1,000, try to be able to paper trail, document where it's coming from. It can't be, I had $50,000 at my house in my safe, and this is my house buying money, and I'm going to deposit it right now and try to close on the house in a week. The underwriter is going to ask questions when it comes to large deposits, and we have to be able to paper trail it, even though it's physical money that you have in your hand. If you can't show a source where it came from, they're not going to let you use it. So those are the things that I kind of recommend, Allison, as far as things to keep in mind whenever you're going to be purchasing, if you're going to be purchasing soon. And again, feel free to reach out to me with any specific concerns that you might have.
Last question, a statement. Yes, this is being recorded. Everybody's going to get a link to the recording and a copy of today's slides, so don't worry about that. What about for someone who is retired and have excellent credit, but income is basically all passive dividends or maybe Social Security? How does that work?
With this particular product, we have to keep what's known as a debt to income ratio at a certain level. As long as the debt to income ratio is at that level, regardless of the income source, as long as it's an income source that we can document and paper trail, then it's fine. Now, if it is not fine, we would have to look at other options, not this particular one, but we can look at other options.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. This was excellent. I love that we had this today. New information and people learning and kind of thinking about what can we do next. Okay, thank you, Dwayne. It was
My
wonderful.
pleasure,
And
Allison.
stand by. We
Thank
may
you.
have some additional questions for you
Sure.
as well.
Sure.
Okay, Cynda, we're gonna let you take it away and talk to us a little bit more about shared housing.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. So I'm with Texas Parents to Parent. We're a statewide nonprofit. We are all parents of children and youth with disabilities, all ages. So this is always on our mind. Where is our son or daughter going to live? So we just want to kind of throw some options out there. This Opportunity Mortgage is an amazing program, and more people definitely do need to know about it, because I think that would help a lot of families have that peace of mind, that their child does have somewhere that they can call home. So next slide, please. So we want to think about, oftentimes when I talk to families about housing, like where is your child going to live? Most of the time the parents say with them. But what we know is we're not always going to be here. And our kids also have their own dreams. So your kid might say, hey, I want to move out. And so what does that look like for them? And what does a home look like? Like where would you want to live? Where would you want your child to live? We want to make sure that they're in the community. And Allison already mentioned that. There's a lot of different housing options out there. I can tell you parents are getting really creative with housing for their loved one with a disability. So looking at, does your son or daughter want to live alone? Do they want to have roommates? I've talked to some families that the parents are like, my son does not want to live with anybody. He wants to live on his own. So again, really listening to what your son or daughter wants. Making sure that that home reflects what they want it to be, and an environment where they have more control. Oftentimes, if you're going into any kind of a group home setting, some sort of structured setting, your son or daughter may not have as much control over what do they want to do every day, when do they want to do it, the times of day, those kind of things. So keeping those things in mind as well. Next slide, please. We also want to look at what's important to our sons and daughters and what's important for them, and how do you find that balance? What we know is all of our young adults have different support needs. And so we want to make sure that they're also part of that process, looking at, again, what's important to them. What do they like? What do they not like? Again, do they want to live with people? Do they not want to live with people? Is there a particular area that they want to live in that they really like to be around? Those kind of things are really important. So finding some sort of person-centered planning tool could be really helpful when you're looking at housing options.
Cynda, we have not done a webinar on person-centered planning, which is shocking. And we really need to. For families that have not done person-centered planning and they'd like to get on that, are there tools online for them to do it themselves? Are there consultants that they hire? Is there anybody that you strongly recommend that you've used that has been great, or you've referred to other families?
So I have a great presenter that could do, actually, I have a couple of great presenters that could do person-centered planning.
Yay.
Families can do it by yourself. Excuse me. You can Google it. There's all kinds of information. My favorite is person-centered thinking. It's also person-centered planning, but person-centered thinking is really looking at what's important to your child, what's important for them, and how do you find that balance? But yes, I can definitely hook you up with a presenter.
That's
So
great. We
it,
we
it,
would love to do a webinar on that because I know that it's talked about a lot and we have absolutely never done that. So that would be
yes.
great.
Yes. The other thing, so person-centered planning is a key part. The other thing, so as I mentioned in that Texas Parent to Parent, we are all parents. And so the other thing that we know is as our kids are getting older, as parents, we're also getting older, right? It takes a village to get all the support that our sons and daughters need, navigating resources, all of those kind of things are a lot. So we went, Rosemary Alexander, who was the founder of our Pathways to Adulthood Transition program, she went to Canada. She found this model of personal support networks, and it's where you're building intentional community around your loved one with a disability, so that there are other people involved. A personal network would be a great thing for a family that really is starting to look at kind of independent housing or shared housing, whatever that might look like. Because you're bringing more people in who everybody has different ideas, different community connections. So it's another tool that we have at Texas Parent to Parent for families. We have trained facilitators who can help families create this intentional community. Because again, as parents, we have to be realistic. We're not always going to be here. So how do we make sure that our child has a good life when we're here, but also when we're no longer here to provide that? So personal support network is a great way to help that family kind of have that peace of mind. What we know from families who we have a lot of shared housing, independent housing, things happening in Central Texas. And so some of those parents have said, you know, it takes time. Don't just jump into this. It takes time. Again, those things that I mentioned before on do they want to live with roommates? I can tell you the experienced parents who have done this, if you're going into a shared housing situation with another family, and in essence, you're getting married, right? You have two households that are going to be in the same household. And so you want to make sure that those relationships are strong, that you have commonalities. You don't have one that's a helicopter parent, but the other one is like, no, we want my son or daughter to have as much independence as possible. So really kind of thinking about some of those things is really important as you're looking at any kind of housing options. So take your time. Don't just jump into this. Reach out to Texas Parent to Parent if this is something that you want to do. More than likely, I have families that probably have experience with something similar to what you might be looking at. So take your time is the big advice from parents who have already done this.
Um, Cynda, you shared once with us, like kind of a checklist or best practices on creating your own shared housing, which I still have. I just wanted to check to see if that's been updated or not. And when we send a link out today with today's slides and a link to the recording, I'd like to include it. If it's the same one, I've already got it, but if not, I need a new one.
It is the same. We have not made any changes on it. And basically, it's kind of a how-to guide. It's things that, again, these parents who have done it before you have learned over the years through their personal experiences. So absolutely share that. It's a great tool for families.
I
So
love that tool. So thank you.
absolutely. All right, next slide, please. So I kind of already mentioned this. It's a big decision to determine, are they going to live alone? Do they need a provider to live with them? Do they not need anybody to live with them? Can you use technology? I can tell you technology has helped people with disabilities live more independently because technology has come so far. So there's lots of different technology that can help. So these are just some things that we want you to consider as you're looking at what that housing option would look like for your loved one. Next slide, please.
I want to mention on the roommate thing, and it doesn't matter if you have a loved one with a disability or neurotypical kids that you sent to college and they were in this 4 roommate thing, these quads or these other things. my experience and personal opinion is more is not always better. It's always cheaper, but more is not always better. Sometimes our kids are a little quirky, and the other kids are quirky too, and sometimes those quirks butt heads, and it can make it where you thought it was going to be wonderful. It makes it terrible for them, terrible for all the parents involved. So I think it's choosing wisely and thinking about those roommates and who those roommates might be and the connections that people have together and what some of the diagnoses may mean for the players, the people that might be involved together. I think it's really, really important because I know a lot of parents have probably had less than ideal roommate situations, and then there's also really wonderful stories where people have had, two, three, four total, as far as roommates, and they all became best of friends and they've lived together for years and years and years, and they're like family. But it is important to get it right, and to turn the knobs if it's not right, because everybody's own well-being, mental health, and everybody's health all in general, it definitely matters on that.
Absolutely. So again, it's a big decision. I will tell you there's a program called Adults Independent and Motivated that's here in the Austin area. And one of the requirements, they have an apartment community where people with disabilities live, but part of their requirement is you have to date their program for a year, meaning you have to, for a year, you have to participate in their social activities and those kind of things, because they really want to get it right. They want to make sure that those people that are going to live together are compatible. Having a roommate is hard. It's hard for people without disabilities. So when you put in those disabilities, and again, everybody's support needs are so different, it's really important to keep that in consideration. Also, if you're going to do some sort of shared residence, again, are you going to be working with another family? The more families you have, I think the more challenging it can be, because again, everybody kind of has their own idea of what that housing might look like. So are you going to do it by yourself? Do you want others involved? As Allison said, you could have multiple people in there, but I can tell you from the experienced parents who have done this, it gets more complicated the more people you put in there. So I can't stress that enough.
And I would say also, like, having the one parent that has purchased the house and the loan is in their name, we start doing joint money, and we're going to put this money up, you're going to put this money up, and couple B gets a divorce, and I mean, it starts being ugly.
Right.
So, and all I say is that life happens. Life has happened to everybody here that's listening today. It ebbs and flows, good times, bad times, and that's true for others. So that could make it complicated. Or if the other person dies and their half of the house is part of the estate. I mean, I could write a book on the things that
so many things, yeah,
could happen.
so many things that could. So again, it needs to be a thoughtful process. You really need to have that plan. And then again, are you going to rent, buy? We have families who have bought the house next door. We have families that put a tiny home in the backyard and the parents moved to the tiny home because the transition was too difficult for their youth with a disability. We see people in apartment communities, apartments next to each other. We've seen families take part of their garage and make it into an apartment for their son or daughter, and that's their level of independence. So what we know is it's going to vary for every person. So again, looking at, maybe you start off renting, right? Maybe you're not ready to make that full commitment. So maybe if you're going to have another person in there, you start off by renting and things go well, and then you buy it, whatever that might look like. So those are some other things to keep in mind as well. Next slide, please. So some ways that you can pay for housing. We have SSI, we have SSDI, those disability benefits, Medicaid waiver programs. You can use Medicaid waiver programs. All of the Medicaid waiver programs have different rules when it comes to housing. So say you have a person that needs a caregiver to live in the house. Well, depending on what the Medicaid waiver program is, there may be some restrictions. We also tell families that when you're looking at that independent living, don't just look at disability related services, start looking at those low income services as well. Because oftentimes our youth with disabilities can qualify for things such as SNAP. Next slide, please. So as I just mentioned, the Medicaid waiver programs, they're complicated. If your son or daughter is lucky enough to have one, there are ways that you can use that to provide support people to live in the household. But again, each Medicaid waiver program, and I refer mostly to CLASS, Community Living Assistance Support Services, and Home Community-Based Services are the two bigger waivers. But each one of those have different requirements on who can be paid as a caregiver. So if your son or daughter needs a caregiver living in that house, depending on the waiver will depend on how that funding is able to be used.
And we've done entire webinars on the Medicaid waiver programs, how to get on the various waivers, what the various waivers are. And I would just like to mention, because we have people listening from, all across the US, not just in Texas. There are Medicaid waivers in every state. So you'll have to look up your state specific waivers. They're called a little bit something different, but all states have waivers. And again, the point of a Medicaid waiver, because I think the first thing that comes to mind is we don't qualify for Medicaid. And it's based off of the kids' income and assets, not the parents when they come up on the waiver list. But the point of the waiver is to waive off some of the cost of care for caring for an individual with a disability to keep them in home and community-based services, depending on the waiver. There may be attendant services or respite services or various therapies that they pay for. There's a lot of different things that come out of these waivers, but in general, these waivers are good at defraying some of the expenses that you might otherwise have to pay for entirely out of pocket. So again, we would say, if your kids are not on the waiver interest list, you want to make sure that they are. I'm speaking for Texas. Texas has a long waiting list, up to 17 years, but there are a lot of states out there across the US that do not have a waiting list. So you might be able to get a Medicaid waiver for your family member now, not in Texas. But in other states, that is true. So definitely worth checking into. Thanks for bringing that up, Cynda.
Absolutely. It's important. We get that question all the time from families. So this link will show you for Texas Medicaid waivers. It will show you all of the services that each waiver allows. So it's a very comprehensive list of the waiver programs. So if you're in Texas, if you're not in Texas, find out what your state Medicaid programs are. As Allison said, not every state is 17 years. There's many states that have a much smaller interest list than we have. So you'll get this PowerPoint. There's just some other resources for you when you're starting to look at housing. Again, Allison will send out that how-to guide that was created from those experienced parents who have done this already. Next slide, please. And then that's it. So I did it. What other questions do we have?
You did a great job, and Consolidated Planning Group loves Texas Parent to Parent. They are an information hub. So while Cynda, talked to us about, creating shared housing, and they do a lot of webinars, a lot of educational webinars. They have a lot of parent trainings and other information out there. Just a wealth of information. I know I've learned a lot from your organization in the past, so I know that families can check out your website and can be on your listserv to be, kind of hearing about events and other things that you guys have going on. So we've talked about a lot of stuff today, and again, it's been a new topic. I know that Cynda and I have partnered together for a shared housing webinar in the past. Because housing is such a huge topic all the time, we have a lot of past webinars on housing. We've never done the opportunity mortgage before, but what we've done on the in the past on housing is basically for people that are thinking of not creating their own shared housing or their own housing, but maybe they wanted to know what housing was available across the state. who, what, where, when, why, how much. So we've done what I call a speed dating on housing, where we have invited other organizations that provide housing for individuals, adults with disabilities. And basically they come on in the course of an hour, they say who they are, where they're located, who they serve, how much they cost, whether or not they take Medicaid waivers or not, and how long is their waiting list. And so for me, like this day and age, there's not a lot of extra time. So if you can sit down for an hour and learn about 12 or 15 places across the state that you might want to check out their website or go take a tour. So you can find those on the Consolidated Planning Group, a YouTube channel. So as always, guys, I always talk about keeping things on your special needs planning radar. We have webinars on all of these topics, you know, future care cost estimates, Texas waivers, interest list, SSI, SSDI, taking a deeper dive into some of the state and federally funded programs, ABLE accounts. We go deep and wide on all of these topics, thinking about post-high school education options, like what am I going to do after high school? Is it a transition program? You know, is it, you know, higher education for an individual with a disability? There's a lot of awesome programs out there. So do check those out and join us for our future webinars. Everybody is going to get a link to the recording and a copy of today's slides. This link here for our upcoming webinars will take you to our future webinars that we have scheduled that you can register for as well. I always like to say we work on a collaborative team here. I know a lot of you have seen Michelle in the past because she does webinars with us as well. And we stand ready to help you when it comes to planning for the future of your loved one. The thing is when it comes to planning for your loved one with a disability, it's almost like a third retirement bucket, like, or two if you're a single parent. But when we have a loved one who has a disability, who may have care needs 20 to 30 years after we're gone, that's a long time to be planning for, and it can feel overwhelming. We help people align their steps. Put a line in the sand. Here's where we are. Here's where we need to go. Here's the knobs that we need to turn to get there over the next 10, 15, 20 years, however long we have left to work, however long we have left to live, whatever that looks like. We meet people where they are in the planning process, and we always offer free personalized consultations to talk to you a little bit more about the planning that you've done so far, get a better understanding of what are the next steps that you need to take, and share a little bit more about how we work and how we may be able to help you on that journey. So thank you everyone for taking your time to be with us here today. Thank you both Cynda and Dwayne. Dwayne's contact information is in the slides. Cynda's contact information is in the slides. We'll send that out, and we're also going to send that checklist, that other document about creating your own shared housing. We'll send that out to everybody. Certainly been my pleasure. Let's make it a great week, everyone, and
Thank you
we'll
so
talk
much.
soon. Take care.
Uh-huh.
Bye now.